Bryan with Prokashi.com back in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And this video will be the last one in the series, Korean Natural Farming, IMO 4, or Indigenous Microorganisms 4. Hey guys, I'm back. It's been about 2 weeks since the last video where I made IMO 3, or Indigenous Microorganisms 3. If you'll remember, I started out with IMO 1, which was a rice culture going to collect the wild microbes. I progressed to IMO 2, which was taking that rice and microorganism culture, mixing it with some brown sugar to multiply it. And then we went to IMO 3, and that was where I took some carbohydrate base. It can be wheat bran or wheat mill run. It can be rice bran. It can be anything that you happen to have. I used I used wheat bran with a little bit of wheat flour to simulate wheat mill run, which is something I didn't have, but I simulated it. And what I did is I put it in my little 2x2 box to allow it to ferment. Now, it's been about 2 weeks. That's about right for this time of the year. It's December. It's the day after Christmas. And here where I live, it's been raining for the past 2 or 3 days straight. It gets down to just above freezing at night and probably no more than 40 or 50 during the day. Not really ideal conditions to make IMO 3, but Korean natural farming allows you a lot of latitude, a lot of ways to, I wouldn't say cheat, but a lot of ways to work around some of the things that you run into, and one of my problems was the elements. So if you saw my IMO 3 update video, you saw that I used a piece of glass to make a poor man's hot frame, so to speak, and that really worked out very well. And I'm going to show you today how I take this IMO 3 that I've allowed to set and ferment and grow and put it with some fresh soil to make IMO 4. IMO 4 is basically the end of the road. That is our final destination. What it is we've taken indigenous microorganisms and we have collected them, multiplied them, changed their food source. The IMO 2, we used sugar. Sugar is a very simple food, so we use that to multiply very quickly the microorganisms, and then we put them back, in my case, on wheat mill run, which is a complex carbohydrate. And I've allowed it to ferment into the IMO 3 that I'm going to show you in just a second. What I've done is I've taught the microbes to go from a very simple sugar diet to go back to a complex carbohydrate diet, because in the ground around us, if you'll notice, there's no sugar. There's complex carbohydrates. You have cellulose, hemicellulose. You have all kinds of, woody stuff. So I had to teach the microbes, hey guys, I know you got really fat and happy on the sugar, but I've got to teach you to go back to eating what you're going to find in nature. And that's what I did with the IMO 3. I used the wheat mill run, wheat bran with some wheat flour. I had some complex carbohydrates. I had some proteins. And now the microbes have learned to consume that, to live on it, and to multiply. So let's look at how it actually looks right now. If you'll notice, this is my little 2x2 box that I put it in about 2 weeks ago, and I've lost a little bit of the volume in the box. You can see along the edges here that the coloration is just a little bit different. So I've lost just a little bit in volume of my IMO. I've got to be very careful because I've got a bunch of ants living in here right now, and the reason for that is the wheat mill run that I used, or whatever you use, the rice bran, wheat bran, whatever, is a very good food source, and this also creates heat. So this process here generates a good bit of heat. This pile actually got to about 120 degrees for several days, and what I did is I started checking around to see if my IMO was done. And the question begs to be asked, how do I know when my IMO is done? So what I do is, the first thing I do is I'll put my hands on it and I'll say, wow, is it warm or is it cold? and it's rather cool. It's not cold, but it's rather cool. And what you do, or what I did before I started filming, is I pulled out a little piece. And if you'll notice, this little piece, it's got nothing but the growth on it. You can see all the white fuzzies. That seems to be the reoccurring theme here, white fuzzies everywhere. And if you'll notice, it's not really heavy. It's very, very lightweight. But if it just kind of, it doesn't fall apart. When we first started this process, the wheat bran just crumbled. But if you look at it now, it actually holds together in clumps. And that's how you know that your IMO worked out, that your IMO 3 is done. Number one, the temperature has cooled off. Number two, you'll notice that you have the good growth. And number three, you'll notice that it clumps together. It doesn't just fall apart. You actually got to kind of break it apart to get it to go. So, what do we do from here? We spent all this time to make all this, and we are going to go from IMO 3, which is this material here that's been fermented, to IMO 4. So, how do we make IMO 4? And this is probably the simplest part of the entire process. IMO 4 is a 1-to-1 ratio of IMO 3 to soil. You can just use plain soil out of the ground. You can use field soil. You can use, if you live near a stream or creek bed, you can use that soil there. Any soil will do. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's a bulk ratio. It's not a weight. It's more of a volume. So what I did is I took my bokashi compost. You know, I'm the bokashi guy. And I made my bokashi compost in my compost generator. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll recognize that bin. And that bin is going to be the soil that I'm going to mix in a 1-to-1 ratio with my IMO here. So what I'll end up doing is I'll just take the soil in here and with a fork just start turning it over and mixing it all together. And you can tell it's rained here a bunch because you can see how wet it is. And the thing about the IMO 4 is going to be the same for the IMO 3 is the moisture. So this is actually a little too wet. If you pick it up, you squeeze it, water will come out, which means it's too wet. But if you look at my IMO 3, it's very dry. So the combination of the two is going to work out perfectly. This being a little too wet, the IMO 3 being very dry, will work out just fine. And what I'm going to do, I got to be careful because you can see that this is very fertile as it is, but I'm going to gently mix this all together. What I'm going to try to do is to get my 60 to 65% moisture content. And traditional method will have you add brown rice vinegar in a 500-to-1 ratio. You have your traditional additives, and you would add fermented plant juice to the mixture. So I would take 50% IMO 3, 50% of my soil, and in my case this is just bokashi composted soil. Those were actually kitchen scraps. Again, you can use whatever you want. You can use old potting soil. I have a bed over on the other side of the yard that I'm going to eventually mix in and make with IMO 3 because it's a dead, it's a dead potting soil, and I want to bring it back to life. It's pretty useless over there, and I'm going to use Korean natural farming techniques to bring it back to life. You can use just a pile of dirt, anything, guys, any soil, as long as it's in a 1-to-1 ratio by bulk or by volume. So I know that my compost generator here for my bokashi is about the same amount of volume as it is here. And what I'm going to do is mix them together, cover them over with some leaves or some straw, and then I'm just going to end up letting it ferment. And the end result, again, I know you've seen this pile several times. The end result is going to be, and this is very wet, so it's not going to necessarily look like this when you do it, because again, I've had the rain for quite some time now. The end result is going to be your IMO 4 pile. So what you can do is just add 50% soil, 50% of IMO 3, mix it together so that just like when we made the IMO 3, when you squeeze the mixture, the moisture doesn't run out like you just saw it. That little bit was actually too wet, and you let it ferment. You put your leaves on top, and that's it, guys. When you're done, about a week or two later, your IMO 4 will be done, and you just use it. So the question again begs, how do you use it? Traditional technique will tell you that you would just take your IMO 4 and you would just sprinkle it lightly on top of whatever soil you're going to use. So in my case, I'm going to use my raised bed garden, and I'm going to sprinkle maybe a centimeter or a half inch on there, and I'm going to let it set. And what will happen is the microbes will actually grow into that soil. They will go down and they will condition that soil. So I will bring life to that soil. I will bring the worms to that soil. I will bring everything to that soil that I've been looking for. And then my fertility will be increased. And it will be a continuous process. Since this is a living product, it will continue to grow, to multiply, and over time, by continually adding my IMO 4 in small layers, I ultimately will increase the fertility and the production of my fruits, vegetables, or whatever I'm going to grow. So it took a little while to show you how to do it. In the wintertime, it takes a little while because it's cold out. But in the summertime, this process is probably about 3 weeks. IMO 1 probably takes anywhere between 3 to 5 days. IMO 2 for the same amount, and then the IMO 3 the same amount. So you're about up to 15 days, and then you have you've got your 2 weeks. You mix your IMO 4, 5 more days, and then you're done, guys. You would just put it in your garden, and then that's it. So I don't know what else to tell you. That's pretty much it. It seems a little anticlimactic considering, you know, everything else we've done so far, but that's it. That's your Korean natural farming. You're building your soil. You're building the life in your soil. You're not having to use chemical fertilizers. And in fact, I don't even fertilize my stuff. I just use what you see here, these microbes, and I'll use some organics such as fish emulsion and my bokashi compost. And that's it, guys. I grow everything I want to grow with just these few techniques, and I hope they've helped you out. I want to thank you all for all the kind emails and letters and stuff like that. It does my heart good that, you know, some of you enjoy this. So if there's any questions you have, feel free to contact me. I'll be glad to talk to you. If not, enjoy your new year. In 2012, this is your chance right now to go ahead and get these practices underway so that you can have the best garden ever next year. So this is Bryan with Prokashi.com. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.